Welcome. Hello. So, today I'm expanding on the 5 bodies, and today we'll be focusing on the intellectual body. Understanding these 5 bodies opens us up to potential life mastery and a deeper sense of self and connection to self. Specifically, the intellectual body, the brain, our thoughts, having deeper awareness around our intellectual body can create a new level of peace, as often it's our intellectual body that's causing us much disharmony and dissatisfaction in life. So stay tuned to find out more. So our intellectual body, it's the mind that has thoughts. Physically, our brain. Our Western society, we operate mostly from this body. It's fascinating. It really is fascinating discovering different cultures that operate less from the intellectual body. My favorite resource for that is Philip Shepherd's books. I've mentioned them before: Radical Wholeness and New Self, New World. It's really interesting, and it just steps us into a whole different paradigm of how to be in this world when we question how it is that we currently do things, and when we don't know any different. It's really fascinating to sort of realize that there's other ways of being and operating in this world. So our intellectual body, our thoughts, our mind, our thinking, whether that's creative thinking, whether that's problem solving, whether it's persistent compulsive thoughts that can often cause us so much suffering. And really, there's the other thing to differentiate is that we've got conscious thoughts that we're deliberately and intentionally thinking about a specific thing or problem. Okay, so obviously me preparing for this live, I was consciously collecting thoughts and ideas around this particular topic. Okay, and then I can be off walking the dog, and I might be, looking at the beach or watching the sunrise, and then there might be these unconscious thoughts that just drop in and arise out of the blue about this particular topic or something else. So it's not just one type of thought. We have, thoughts that are deliberately and intentionally we're thinking about. Like when I've got a problem at work and I'm problem solving, I'll be, brainstorming or using specific methods to culminate and collect and gather all the wisdom and knowledge and understanding that I have about a particular area. I'm just jotting down some things here. Wisdom, understanding, knowledge. As opposed to, as I said, just when ideas just seemingly, or thoughts just seemingly pop in, like all of a sudden I'm thinking about a particular person or a scenario. It's fascinating when we start observing our thoughts. In terms of persistent compulsive thoughts, I have had an experience a couple of times where I've got compulsive thinking, and it was a particular thought. I won't say what it was, but it was about physical harm to my body. And so every time I had this particular thought, it was actually causing me excruciating pain, because our brain doesn't know the difference between a imagined experience and a real experience. Okay, that's why when we're watching a kid fall over and graze their knees, or a movie, we will feel the feelings of what we're observing. Okay, we're not the one that's grazed the knees, but often we will recoil and go, ooh, we have a sense of what pain that person is going through as we're doing it. So to have persistent compulsive thinking that's actually really detrimental, really painful, is so debilitating. It was probably one of the most up there as one of the most stressful scenarios that I've experienced. Was this compulsive thinking. It did eventually pass, but it was really confusing to me as to what was going on. It was the closest I've felt to going mad, and it gave me a real experience to be able to sympathize with people who are going mad, or having thoughts of harm to themselves, or wanting to end significant pain. So and it wasn't like I was intentionally trying to have those compulsive thoughts. There was no choice. It was just happening, and it was over and over again over a period of, I think, up to about 48 hours. So grateful for that, in terms of granting me an understanding that I didn't have prior to having that. Okay, so whatever your thoughts are about those unconscious thoughts that just pop into our head, like whether you believe that all these thoughts are just floating around in the collective and they just channel and come through, look, I don't know. It's an interesting theory. There's definitely evidence to support such a concept. Curiously, we love watching movies, and quite often I'll go back and we'll watch older movies that we grew up on, or that we've enjoyed early on in our lifetime, and quite often the topics or the themes or aspects that are in these very popular movies, you're like, wow, this is kind of played out in real life. And so the idea that perhaps the idea that all the humans, our collective thinking and what we focus on is actually creating our reality, is a really, really fascinating theory. I can't say one way or the other. I don't have enough evidence to go, yes, this is absolutely what's occurring. But it is just a curious thing to contemplate and be aware of. As well as our thoughts, with largely what's going on in our beautiful intellectual body is our belief system. So what we believe to be true about ourselves and about the world. And what I have loved ultimately with learning coaching is the ability to identify our beliefs, because again, a lot of them are largely unconscious, and then actually analyze and go, well, actually this belief that I have about myself is actually blocking me from having the results that I want in my world. And so having the ability to flesh out unconscious beliefs and then be able to work with our beliefs and change them, because they're just made up. They're just coming from when we form those beliefs based on our experiences, more often than not when we're really little and don't have a full perspective or greater perspective about the scenarios that we're experiencing. So, you know, that's where the gold comes from, being able to identify and then implement a change, and therefore then change the results that I get in the world. Being able to identify whether my thoughts and beliefs are either benefiting me or whether they're detrimental, not only to me but maybe the version of myself that, or the version of the future that I want for myself. So if I'm telling myself that I'm not creative, what is that preventing me having? I use that example because it's such a common one. You know, people who'll mention, you know, ask people what sort of creative outlets do they have? And they'll go, oh no, I'm not creative. And I must admit, I have had that one in the past, and I've also realized that I had a limited view of what I believed creativity actually was, and sort of linked it to, you know, being an artist of some description. And the truth is, I'm very, very creative in my problem solving, in my ability to perceive and look at different perspectives on things and create new ideologies and perspectives and views on things. So when we have an understanding that, you know, we've got conscious thoughts, conscious beliefs, unconscious beliefs, and that we can look at these in terms of whether it's beneficial, whether it's detrimental, I can then go, well, do I need an intervention here? Do I need to refocus? Okay, if I'm constantly imagining things going wrong in my life, is that beneficial to me? Remembering, brain doesn't know the difference between a real and an imagined experience. So would I like to reframe? Would I like to change my thinking from focusing on negative things into positive things? Okay, and that one little activity in itself can totally reset the relationship that I have with my thoughts. Okay, so there's so much richness there. In terms of becoming or developing a deeper connection with my intellectual body, that ability to actually just take time to contemplate and figure out what my thinking is, what are the unconscious thoughts that are popping in, what am I consciously focusing on, would there be some changes there that would be beneficial to myself? Okay, digging in deeper into my thinking and my beliefs. Okay, a big profound understanding that I got about my intellectual body quite some years ago that has been so profoundly beneficial is I am not my thoughts. Okay, yes, it forms a part, a big aspect of who I am, but I am actually not my thoughts, particularly those ones that are just dropping in, that I don't actually understand the source of where they're coming from. As I said, are they just floating around in the ether, finding a brain to pop into at a random point in time? Well, that's not me. Okay, definitely I can own my conscious thinking, because I can start to, with that level of inquiry, notice whether my conscious thinking is beneficial or detrimental, and then choose something that is more beneficial for me. Okay, so being aware that I am not my thoughts. Okay, it's an aspect of self. Becoming the observer of thoughts. Okay, as opposed to just letting the thoughts run rampant, having the ability to go, wow, where'd that thinking come from? Why do I have that belief? And actually having the ability to step back and becoming the observer of my thoughts, as opposed to totally just associating and identifying as my thoughts. Okay, I'm not my thoughts, and can I be the observer of thoughts? Okay, a nice frame to run with in doing that is to be curious and compassionate about what we're observing with our thinking. Just go, okay, I'm really curious about that. Where's that coming from? And go, if I'm having thoughts that I identify as being detrimental, okay, having some compassion for myself as a human who is having the experience of having those thoughts. Okay, being able to sort of flip between having the thoughts and becoming the observer of thoughts gives us so much, what's the word? It empowers us, because then we have choice about what we're going to engage with and what we're going to disengage with our thinking. Okay, until we have that ability to observe our thoughts and know that we are not our thoughts, then we're being ruled by something that we largely don't have a lot of control about. So stepping back, becoming the observer, having compassion and curiosity about what we're observing in our thoughts is very empowering. All of a sudden, the intellectual body, isn't fully running the show. We've got choice. Okay, so that's particularly useful when starting out to develop greater awareness and increase our relationship that we have with our intellectual body. Had a lovely mentor and teacher years ago that really highlighted that ultimately our greatest journey in this lifetime is to really be able to bring our awareness that we're culturally being encouraged to operate from our intellectual brain, the journey from the brain to operating out of the heart, the more emotional space. And in me learning that, I'd already sort of had awareness about my disconnection with my emotional body, but ultimately it's sort of for a while created a little bit of friction there, because I'm like, well, I want to be in my heart, you know, that's the ultimate journey, is connecting with the heart. I don't want to be so head-based. I don't want to be in my intellectual body 100% of the time. And what that did was create actually significant disharmony for a period of time, because I'm kind of hating on my intellectual body that I was largely operating from. And then I came across a beautiful video by Teal Swan, whose work I really admire and have benefited from. And she was like, well, instead of, hating on the intellectual body, how about we make friends with it? Can we be friends with our mind and make peace with our mind, as well as strengthening and enhancing our connection to the other four bodies? And that sort of really brought in less resistance, less friction, as I was trying to get away from operating from the intellectual body. I've mentioned Byron Katie's The Work, where she's got a beautiful frame of questionings that allows us to really question our thoughts, and actually sort of go to show that there's not a lot of truth to our thoughts or our beliefs. They are all made up, and it allows us to sort of again create a greater awareness and a sense of compassion, and lessen the hold that often our thoughts and beliefs can have on us. We've all heard about meditating. Okay, there's lots of different ways of meditating. We can choose to focus on a particular thought or thing, or alternatively, it's actually about not thinking. focusing on just being. That is quite the challenge. I like to work with the idea of contemplation or inquiry as opposed to meditation. For me personally, I just have found it a lot more easier. However, definitely meditation, the benefits are well documented. And ultimately what we're looking to do is create choice, as I said, about choosing what thoughts, what beliefs that we actually want to engage with, and are there ones that are detrimental to us that I can choose to disengage with. If they're not supportive of me and the life and who I want to be in this world, being empowered enough to realize that it is choice. So they're sort of the things that I wanted to overall mention about the intellectual body for now. I will save diving into the intellectual body's relationship with the other four bodies for another video. You may have noticed that all of a sudden I've gone from 4 brains to 5, and there was some interesting thoughts that went on and behind that as I've been expanding out this coaching and healing model that this is all underpinning. As much as I didn't want to include the spiritual body is definitely included there. Anyway, when I speak to that particular body, I will go into more detail as to why there was resistance in myself in including that, and why it had to be included once I'd sort of figured that out. So hopefully this has given you some interesting thoughts, and perspectives into the intellectual body that can hopefully help create a deeper level of awareness, connection and comfortability with the intellectual body. As I stated at the beginning, having an understanding of this so that we can really empower ourselves to have more harmony, have more satisfaction, deeper sense of awareness, connection of ourselves, and in doing so also helps us with others as well. Love your feedback. Thanks for listening, and yours enjoy and out.